You're listening to a Mel and Kim Productions podcast.
Renee Gracie.
Renee Gracie.
And Renee Gracie.
Father Renee Gracie.
Renee Gracie.
Renee Gracie.
Hello and welcome to In the Backseat with me, Renee Gracie. Join me on this captivating ride as I speak to fascinating people who have dared to take unconventional roads to success. Let's buckle up and take the ride together. All right, welcome back to another episode of In the Backseat, and today's special guest is David Neitz.
Hi, Renee.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very, very good.
Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, lovely to be here in the studio, in the back seat.
Yeah, in the
It's
back
lovely.
seat, yeah.
I know. This is the most luxurious back seat I think I've ever been in. It's really nice.
Well, it's a pleasure. I'm so excited to talk to you today about your background in football to start off with.
Yep.
Not that I follow AFL or football at all whatsoever.
Not a massive AFL fan.
No, sorry. My dad is, but just from someone who's been in a competitive industry like motorsport before, it's obviously always interesting talking to people who have been at such a high level of competitive sport, especially AFL in Melbourne is like so intense. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm sure you've got some incredible stories about your whole AFL journey and then obviously where you're at today.
Yeah, no, absolutely looking forward to having a trip down memory lane. It's a few
Yeah.
years ago now, but
Yeah.
but look, no, it is. It's a super competitive industry, particularly in Melbourne, but across Australia at the moment. So that was always a childhood dream to play the game and then to be able to play and with relative success was really, really exciting and really proud of that part of my life.
Yeah. What was life growing up for you like when you were a really young boy growing up in school? Where did you grow up and when did your passions for football come through?
Yeah, well, I was born in Tassie, you know, little Tassie, a little place called
Tassie.
Ulverston.
Yeah, okay.
So, but wasn't there for very long. Mum and Dad went there and he was an electrician by trade, and then he was working in the mines down there for a little while, and then just enough time to have me. He played footy down there as well in Tassie, won a couple of best and fairest in their local league. He was a really good footy player. So he ended up playing for St Kilda in the reserves. Didn't quite crack it for a senior game, but he was a really good footy player, and I guess that's where the love of footy came from, through Dad really, and then through living in Melbourne. You know, a young kid living in Melbourne, everyone's kicking a footy around or bowling a cricket ball at that time. Not that I was bowling too many cricket balls. I was a bit more into little aths and running around and doing those things. But yeah, loved it from a really young age. Grew up in sort of southeast of Melbourne in Noble Park, Dandenong, so it was an interesting area. We had some very rough and tumble out there back in the day. And yeah, just sort of progressed my way through the junior ranks.
Yeah. And how is that when you realise that you've got a passion for the sport, you're young, you're trying to make your way through, but knowing that it's obviously quite competitive and pretty much every kid in the whole of Victoria wants to become an AFL player. How do you navigate that, and how do you really distinguish if you can actually make it and if you've got the talent to do it?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I remember I used to be a St Kilda supporter when I was growing up and go to the games, and back in the day where you could race out onto the grounds as a little kid and kick the footies around, you know, and I'd think, oh, there's a recruiter, he's going to see me from the stands, I better make sure this is an amazing kick, you know, but it was all just a bit of a dream. And then I guess at the age of around about 13 or 14, some talent identification guys came out, start to watch a few games. When I was starting, it was a zone system, so not a draft like it is now. So it just wherever you lived, you're assigned to that team.
Oh yeah, okay.
And Melbourne was my team, so they had some guys come out, you know, and a few players would be selected to go into some pathway squads, if you like. And I've just sort of been able to, which is really exciting as a young kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was able to sort of make my way through that, and then, you know, sort of under 14s and 15s, made some Victorian representative teams, and then it happened pretty quickly, really. I was a relatively tall kid, but at the age of 15, they asked me to play with Melbourne under 19s. So I was like, Okay, so
So you're quite young, versus like 15 to 19-year-olds.
Yeah, when
Quite
you're
big kids.
Well, when you're 15,
Yeah.
playing against kids that are 19, it's a bit of a difference in size.
Yeah.
Like I ended up playing my career in key position.
Yep.
Places on the ground, there, centre half forward, centre half back, full forward.
Mm.
I started off on the wing, which is where the little whippets would play in the real game. So, just sort of progressed through the ranks and had a really good grounding actually playing. Again, sort of in year 12, I got put onto the senior list at Melbourne. So 17 years old and then playing against men in those days.
Yeah.
And
So 17's classified as senior. You're willing and able to play with the big boys at that age.
Well, yeah, it was at that point because they started to bring in the national draft, so that Melbourne basically had to either put the young kids that they'd been developing onto the senior list or let them go into the draft and anyone can have them. So they put me on their senior list.
Yeah.
And then, I'm playing against, there are guys like David Rees-Jones, who was I think he's the most reported person in the history of the AFL.
Yeah, right.
And playing against guys like Terry Danaher and all these legends of the Chris Mew, who was like a 4 or 5 time premiership player for the Hawthorn Footy Club, and little old me still doing year 12 at 17 trying to compete. So, but that was a great grounding, It's a bit of a sink or swim scenario, but you had to go in there and, big up, convince yourself that you could do it, and get out and compete.
What's it like doing all of that stress and that pressure with going to school and sort of flicking that switch of being a normal kid by day and being an AFL player by night?
Yeah, it was interesting because obviously, you're doing year 12, which is a big year, and you got to focus in on your studies to some degree, and it's a bit easy to slip into the mentality that hey, I've made it. I've done all I'm reaching my dream now already. This is my lifetime goal as a kid, and here I am. So why does it kind of matter? But look, I think, particularly thanks to my parents, they sort of grounded me pretty well. Got a good bunch of mates as well that sort of keep you well grounded. I was able to still focus in just enough to scrape in and end up going to Victoria Uni. Yeah. I didn't finish the course, but I started.
That's all that matters.
I started the course. I finished a different course a couple of years later, but got into uni, so managed to sort of do that okay. But it was certainly a different. It's a different pathway, and you're doing different things as a 17 and 18-year-old while you're trying to forge a professional career. As some of your other mates are taking different pathways and having probably a lot more fun at that time as well.
And how is that from work-life balance, as in work going to AFL and then life balance, having mates, and you're 17, 18, you obviously want to go out and have a few drinks and hang out with the boys and all that sort of stuff. And then also from a work perspective, were you earning money from football at that time, or were you managing a job as well? Yeah,
well, it was fascinating. I feel pretty lucky that in my era when I started, so that was 92, 93, so basically everyone in the AFL had a full-time job and footy sort of supplemented their income. We trained basically Tuesday, Thursday nights, played on the Saturday and trained again on the Sunday morning. So it was very suburban, if you like.
Yeah.
So everyone, I went to uni and my job was playing footy, so that's what I did.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of guys that were, whatever they were doing. There were some tradie guys, there were some guys in finance. There's a whole range of different vocations. But I guess that as well, from my perspective, it put some reality into life as well. That okay, you're playing AFL footy, you're reaching your dreams, and there was more money coming into the game at that time, but still, all the heroes and all the great players that I'm looking at, they're all going to work and doing their thing. So
that's crazy.
It was really grounding.
Yeah, you wouldn't assume that you're watching. Like, watching these guys winning like grand finals or player of the matches and playing some epic games. And they got to go to work on Monday.
Oh, that's exactly right.
That's weird.
It's exactly right. So,
Yeah,
and then
interesting.
it all started to change a few years later, and then it was more money started coming to the game. The AFL Players Association at that time really stepped in and sort of fought for player rights, which obviously I was the benefit of, and a whole stack that have come in my era and that have come since have been the benefit of. But yeah, it is when you see. I don't know. Well, Jim Steins, he was a fantastic player, Brownlow medalist, all that kind of thing. But yeah, the next day he'd be rocking up to work and teaching kids at schools and doing those things.
I feel like that's a very unknown thing probably to a lot of people. I used to get that a lot just in my motorsport career, past and previous, that most people would be like, oh, you raced the Bathurst 1000, you must be so rich. And I'm like, I'm getting paid nothing to be here and I'm fucking broke and I've got to go to work on Monday to pay for me being here right now. Like, what are you talking about? People would often be surprised, and there was a few drivers that were in the same position. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting that it's sort of across the board. It's been like that. Admittedly, that happened back in like the 90s you're talking about. I'm talking like 2015.
Yeah, I know.
So there's a bit of a gap.
There's a little bit of a gap, but I can feel you.
Yeah.
I can feel that, and that was and for a lot of guys, and probably the guys that were maybe just before me. In some ways, it's great that they they're playing footy at the highest level, but they still forge a fantastic career. And now I think the challenge for the younger guys coming through is to try and find that balance.
Yeah.
Because really these days you go from one institution of school and then you go into the institution called AFL footy, where you're in a bit of a bubble. And sometimes it's challenging to really get outside of that, get a taste of real life, and find that bit of grounding and find that direction for the next part of life. So so it's a little bit difficult, I think, for the young guys coming through now, even though it's much more lucrative.
Yeah.
But there's swings and roundabouts and everything, I suppose.
Yeah, positives and negatives. And that's one question that I was actually talking about before you came here, was the interest in to know the difference between, is there support for those exit strategies and those exit pathways for football players now? And what happened when you left after your heroic time at Melbourne Football Club and all, like, you hold some great records. I've got here that you still hold some records for the Melbourne Football Club.
I
Is
do,
that right?
yeah.
So it's one of those things, like, you are in this bubble of being so successful, and most people have to retire because they get injured or whatever it may be. Sometimes it's quite abrupt, it's quite dramatic, and they can never play football again. What happens when all the lights get turned off and you're not playing footy anymore? Do you have support, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, as you say, it can be really abrupt for some people, and generally it is. Most of the time, people sort of finish when they feel like they've still got a bit of music left inside of them. But a club decides, no, there's younger kids coming through and we think your time's up. And a lot of guys is left standing there thinking, well, hang about.
Yeah.
I felt like I've got
the decision gets made for them, essentially.
Yeah, and it gets ripped out of your hands. So so it's a little bit difficult for a lot of people. For me personally, it was an injury in the end that got me. I had it's amazing. I had a spinal injury basically.
Wow.
But it's amazing how I'm sort of digressing a little bit.
No,
so
that's
sorry.
okay. Tell us about it.
But yeah, so it was amazing how your mind can take you to places and you can think things are quite normal. So when I'd retired, in the pre-season, I'd injured my neck and it was horrible. I didn't really do anything much to it. But anyway, it was just debilitating and I found it really... Anyway, so I went to the doctors and the physios and they tried to manipulate it and fix it. It wasn't getting any better. But I decided it was fine for me to wear a neck brace pretty much from whenever I wasn't training, just wear a neck brace because it was difficult to hold my neck up in an upright position because it just gets tired, the muscles. So I'd do that, drive to training, park the car like a minute before, take the neck brace off.
Wow.
Go train, get through, drive back in the car, hide around the corner, put the neck brace back on,
Yeah.
and think, I can do this.
I can do this. Yeah.
I'm fine. Everything's good.
Yeah. What was the turning point when you realised you weren't fine?
I got tackled in a game. It was sort of the 6th game of the season, and it was just an innocuous contest, and I got tackled, and I had a shooting pain down the back of my spine. I thought, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
It was instantaneous, and it took me a little while to sort of before I really got the diagnosis. But yeah, and then it was all over just like that. In the middle of the MCG, no one would have known, but in my mind, I kind of knew. Yeah, I'm done. I think I'm gone here.
Yeah, wow. And then what happens post exit and you know that you're done? Like, do you get support from AFL or the team that you were with? How does that work?
It's interesting, right? So the AFL are okay. There is, through the AFL Players Association, there is some career guidance opportunities and things like that. So that's really good. But it's interesting when you're in the system, and I've been in the team, captain of the team for 16 years, and it's amazing. You step out for 5 minutes and you know that everyone else is on a different train in their life. Everyone else in that organisation is thinking about, what am I eating? What's my next training session? How am I getting better? You know, they're on this sort of highly driven program to succeed and get better, and you're out of it. And you know, you've still got mates in there, but when you're out, you can't help but feel out and exposed a little bit and stepping into the unknown. You're not really sure what you're doing. I ended up, as I say, I ended up finishing my uni degree, ended up doing a communications degree. I was doing a little bit of work at the time, sort of, you know, my day off. I'd go into Australia Post and work with their sponsorship and marketing team. So I was trying to get myself into that space where I'd have something to move to. But even then, you get out and you're alone and you're exposed. And you're not really sure of what you're doing. You go from being super confident about your role and who you are and how you perform in this sporting field, and then you've got to sort of look around and start again.
And you're like almost pretending to be a normal person. Like you feel like you're disguising yourself a little bit. Like you're not just the person who you were all those years ago playing great football. You're now this new person who you don't actually recognise. Did you feel like that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because it's part of your identity, and it does become part of you. And you've got a whole, after you spend a bit of time in the system, you've got a whole friendship group and a whole network of people that know you as this person and this is what you do. And then you're carving new relationships out with people and you're like, well, yeah, but I'm not really that person. I am that person. It's part of me, but it's not all of me. And there's a new pathway that I need to sort of identify with and find. So, and that can be a bit of a challenge at times, you know, and it's not just a linear pathway where you go, yeah, I've found a vocation. This is really fantastic, and away I go into the sunset. It's pretty rare that kind of happens, I think.
Yeah, my thought process is definitely for a lot of athletes that can be, speaking from personal experience, when my career ended, I was like, devastated, confused, lost, and I almost felt like I was pretending to be this person that I wasn't. And similar to what you were just saying, people would always be like, oh, you're that chick that raced cars. And I'm like, no, and that's not me anymore. And I used to get like all that.
And rebel against it a little bit.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be that person anymore, but I had to accept it as a part of who I am. And ever since I did that, everything went in the right direction. But I feel like from what I achieved in, I guess, motorsport, I think for someone like yourself, like who was so good at what you did, and AFL is a very like historical thing, like you will be remembered forever. And I feel like that there's a lot of pressure on these guys too to sort of to keep that going and to be that person that's remembered forever. But yeah, when a career can be over, it can be like, whoop, you're done, see you later. And I can just imagine how tough, and I'm sure everyone has very different roads to recovery post-exit of sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure it's probably affected a lot of people that you know as well in regards to what they do post-career and how they sort of handle their life being a normal person again.
Yeah, and some people do it better than others, and some people, I've had some mates that have been on a good pathway seemingly, and then for it to sort of really nosedive a little bit and had some real genuine mental health issues and mental health struggles. I think think there's quite a lot that have some sort of mental health issue, because it is as you were just talking about there, it becomes an identity piece, is a little bit about, well, it's not just what am I going to do as a job, but who am I now? Who am I? Am I really that person? You wrestle with that sort of conversation within your own mind. But yeah, look, it's a challenge. But as I say, I feel glad that I was sort of in this era that I was in, where I was able to get a little bit of a taste early days to think, well, footy's not just footy. It's not going to be here forever, and there is something else that you've got to sort of arm yourself with along the way.
Yeah, and that sort of leads us into this next thing.
You're listening to In the Backseat with Renee Gracie.
You have Brewmanity.
Yes.
Tell us about that and how this venture of yours came about, because I read that you guys were sort of having a few beers with your mates and you started conversations, and how has that developed into what you have now?
That's right. Well, I thought, what else to do but have a career in footy and a career in beer.
Yeah, they go
straight
hand in
after
hand.
that, it's like, every man's dream, right? I'm like, what? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So no, that's look, it's not exactly how it worked out, but so no, I initially, from a work perspective, as I say, I did a little bit of work in a marketing sense. I did a little, I tried to go out and do my own sort of thing in that space, but I was way too green, and it was like, failed.
Yeah.
Then I did a bit of work at Swiss Vitamins. I went and worked with Swiss. They were a fantastic company, huge growth trajectory, and a whole lot of stuff in their sponsorship team and marketing program, which was awesome. But clearly there was a cultural fit with Swiss and iSwiss, health vitamins and all that sort of stuff, and I ended up in beer. So much as I love Swiss, maybe the cultural fit wasn't quite there. And I guess the beer thing came from I really enjoyed beer. When I finished playing footy, I went overseas for a little while. I went over to great beer drinking countries, Germany and Belgium and places like that, and didn't know much about craft beer in particular, but whilst I was over there, going into the different breweries, understanding a bit more about beer and the beer making process and so many different varieties. I was fascinated at the time that I went to this little place in Belgium, and each beer had a different glass that it came with, because the glassware changed the way the beer was supposed to taste.
Yeah, wow.
There was just all these amazing different things.
That's a fancy way to drink beer.
Fancy way to drink beer, right? And so I still had the same effect, unfortunately.
Yeah, still
too
beer.
many of them. But I came back with a bit more of an appreciation of beer. And then through mutual friends, I had a mate of mine who worked at CUB. And he had launched like Fat Yak and some early craft beers in Australia. So we became mates. Got chatting and sort of one of these days we'll do something in beer, and probably like lots of blokes do after they've had too many beers. Go, let's go and do something. This will be amazing.
Yeah, but you made it happen though. That's the difference.
And
maybe you had just enough beers for that conversation. You didn't go over the edge of too many beers where you forgot about it in the morning.
I actually remembered this conversation this time,
and you made it happen.
So what happened was that Neil Danaher then was diagnosed with motor neurone disease, which who was my ex-coach, who for 10 years we had a great relationship as captain and coach for quite a few of those. But he unfortunately was diagnosed with motor neurone disease, and said, boys, it's a devastating thing. It's going to get me, but I'm going to have some fun and I'm going to raise some money while I'm doing it, and you guys are going to help me. Yeah. So I said to Jamie, well, look, we've been talking about this for a while, and another mate of mine, Paul Hopgood, let's create this beer and let's go out. We know a few publicans around. Let's go and raise some money for Neil, and who knows, maybe this beer thing will go somewhere or it'll go nowhere. Yeah. But we went out to 50 publicans. We said we're going to do the most charitable happy hour in Victoria, and we raised about $50,000, which was awesome. So a really good thing. Neil only raised about $5 million.
He's done a very good job
in that year. Yeah, he's done an amazing job. So, but that's how it all started. For us, and it sort of kicked off from there.
And you're still quite charitable with Brewmanity at the moment and sort of everything that you do, you try to have charity and community sort of at the forefront of this beer, I guess. It's sort of more than just beer. So explain to us about sort of all the other things that you try to involve with obviously this brand.
Yeah, the whole thing is around good beer, good deeds and good times, right? And our motto is, from a good place. Because it's like, well, a lot of beer companies or independent beer companies come from a location.
Yep.
The Burnley Beer Co. or the whatever it might be. But we actually come from a different place. We come from a place of doing good, right? So we come from a good place.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's sort of the ethos of what it is.
It's very sentimental for a beer, especially made by men. That's quite cute, I must say.
I know. I don't know whether people get it or not, but anyway, I don't care either.
It's
so
nice. It's cool. It's interesting.
So and we've got our brewery, and that's a good place, right? So better than a good place, but the whole thing is that's where we come from, and basically what we do is a portion of each. It all comes from the beginning, really. So it was the idea initially was to create some beer, go to some publicans, use the beer to then create more fundraising, more awareness. And so we've tried to just carry that basic philosophy all the way through. So in effect, we just have a small little portion, beer's you've really got to make a lot of beer to really make money out of beer. We don't make that much volume, and there's smaller margins in the beer itself. But what we do is we do little micro donations. We then create a pool of money, go out to whether it's publicans. We went out to Coles this year and did a campaign with them, which raised a lot of money. But from our little sort of humble beginnings, try and create as much awareness and funds as we can. So,
do you choose where you then donate that? Or does that go to specifically to fight MND, or where does the donations go from there?
We go
everywhere.
We go straight to fight MND.
Yep.
We've just sort of kept it. Really, at the end of the day, the reason that we started was because of our mate, and we're saying, well, we're doing it because of him. We've started it because of him. So we could sort of do a whole range of different things, but we said no, that's our cause. So let's do it. We've raised over $1 million before this year, and then with the campaign that we just did with Coles, that raised like $700,000 just this year. So it's been awesome. So 1.7 that we've sort of had our fingerprints over, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
For what we've been trying to do. So
how do these charity events work, and how do you go about the donations? How do those conversations go when you're starting? Okay, we're going to raise money. We're going to do an event or whatever it may be. How does that process work?
So we work with our community, really. So we work with a community of pubs and bottle shops and things like that. We create one or two campaigns throughout the year. In effect, we say, hey, we can make some beer for you. Here's a keg of beer. Work with us. But we know that when the publican sells the beer, they can make much more money out of it than we can from actually making the beer. So we just go around and we just do a whole range of activities like that, and where we just try to take from a small thing, just expand the donations. So we all do it as a community. It's not just us. It's not Brewmanity. You're saying here's $1 million.
Yeah,
it's sort of working with the community and engaging, encouraging people to get behind it. We run our own little fundraising events with our friends and our wider community, and we get our brand involved and the beer drinking community. And then over the last couple of years, we've Coles are a partner with Vitamin D, but Coles Liquor haven't been. So we worked really hard with Vitamin D and with Coles Liquor to bring everyone all together to create a big fundraising campaign, and that's raised nearly $1 million on its own in the last 2 years.
Yeah, wow, it's incredible. And do you do anything else in regards to charity stuff other than beer? Because I know that there's a lot of other things. I know there's the big freeze and stuff like that. So can you tell us other things that sort of go on in the background?
Look, I'm an ambassador for Vitamin D, and so the whole range of different things I do for the organisation. But my main thing is really is to create this product and then do what we can through our fundraising through that. And then we've built our brewery. So we've built a brewery in South Melbourne.
Oh, nice.
It's awesome. So it's like 4 levels. 2 of those levels you got rooftop bars with amazing city views and things like that.
Give it a plug. What's the Addy?
Yeah, so it's in Tope Street in South Melbourne, just behind Bell's Hotel there. But it's a ripping little spot. But within that, we do a little thing called Sip and Sizzle. Again, this whole thing about micro giving, that's more about our local community. So, we'll invite, it's a bit of a rip-off of a Bunnings thing where we provide the sausages and the bread and the beers. And we say, here's a space, here's beer, here's sausages. You guys take the space, take it over and raise as much money as you can
that's great.
on a Sunday. So we do little things like that where we can do just a little bit of micro giving, but, people might raise a couple of thousand. Someone raised about 5,000 last 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So it was just little cool things that we can do, and it's pretty easy for us, but hopefully makes a bit of a difference.
Yeah, we've got some of it here. I want to have a look at it, and you can talk me through what we're looking at.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm not a beer drinker.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, that's okay. We've got drinks for you.
And you would think that I would be a beer drinker because I grew up at racetracks, but I think that's why I don't like beer, because everyone used to hand me beers when I was like a young, impressionable girl going, here, drink this. This will be funny. Yeah. So we've got the Mouth of Melbourne lager.
The lager, yes.
So talk us through this. When you say craft, actually we'll really dumb it down.
Yeah.
When you're talking about craft beers.
It's actually not craft, I'm going to say. I think it's probably...
That's what you learnt about, which you liked the idea of, and you've sort of brought it over.
That's right. It is craft brewing, but it's more really independent brewing is what it is. So, that's our lager, our Mouth of Melbourne, and our venue's in South Melbourne. It's a really traditional beer drinking area, so that's a traditional style lager. So it's that was actually would be quite familiar if you're used to drinking your mainstream Carltons or something like that. You can have some familiarity with that, but I guess. The big difference with that one, I guess, is the big boys, they ferment their beers takes them about 2 days to do it. They put some things in it to speed up the process. For us, it takes about 4 weeks to do it because we do it in a natural way. So by taking
is that better for your gut and stuff, and it's just easier to drink?
Well, we can't make health claims, but the whole idea is it's
better.
It's better, and it's brewed without any adjuncts or anything like that. So you do taste the difference in that. It's a really, really crisp and clean and delicious lager, but familiar enough if you're a traditional beer drinker, if you like.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
And then
we've got about 12 different beers.
What would you recommend for me if I am not a beer drinker, but let's just say, do you do a cider or more like something sweet?
Well, I tell you,
can beer be sweet? Is that the dumbest thing to say?
We've got a beer that's called a lemon tartar, which is a sour style of beer, which might be but it's like a limoncello, infused with a very light sour style beer called a Berliner Weisse. So that beer could be for you.
That sounds like it could be for me.
Yeah, so that's delightful, perfect for a summer afternoon on the deck. And then we've actually just created these. We're calling them blenders, right? So we have created the drink in the brewery, but then we blended it with like a vodka and strawberry and lime, and we're blending them with spirits and flavour, if you like.
Yeah, right.
So you could come to the brewery, have one of those, and you'll be blown away by that.
Yeah, I know that sounds good. And what are these ones here that we have? So this one's a slider, extra crisp. Ooh, XPA. These are. I see these. What does that mean?
Extra. Yeah, good question. Everyone just makes up names these days in the beer world, but it's an extra pale ale.
Okay, pale ale. Yeah.
An extra pale ale. Now it could be extra pale. It could be extra hoppy. It could have extra flavour. It could be. The colour could be just extra pale, but this one in particular, what we've done with this one, we've called it to make it even better, we've made it a cold XPA, which means that it's fermented like a lager, but it's got the flavour of a pale ale. So it's got a little bit more fruitiness and things like that. So you get the flavour up front in the front of your palate, but at the back of your palate it just goes down really easy, nice and crisp, really clean, and you sort of
I feel like I've had a pale ale before, and they are fruity.
A little fruitier.
Yeah, but then it has like the beer taste afterwards, and then you're like, oh.
That's not for you.
No.
That's our job. That's our job to create beers for everyone.
For everyone.
We need to create a beer for you.
Yeah.
And I reckon if I should have brought the limontada.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
That sounds good, to be honest. I mean, I can do a cider
Yeah.
because that's beery.
It's not beer. It's not beer at all. It's apples. Come on. No.
That's as beery as it gets for me. I'm sure if I was I used to have a wine sponsor and I don't drink wine either, and he always used to make me
What do you drink? What's your drink? Ciders?
whiskey.
Whiskey.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, of course.
Yeah.
You know.
I did grow up at a racetrack, so it was one thing
Correct.
I learned was to drink just room temperature whiskey out of the bottle that the boys would leave laying around.
That's a skill.
Yeah.
I reckon that's an impressive skill.
For some reason, I just thought it was delicious. And I still do to this day. I can do tequila as well, and that's pretty much
Oh
it.
yeah, we get some lovely tequila.
Yeah. So what's your goals for your beer in particular? Obviously, you sort of want to make something that everyone's drinking. You've got this passion for the community. Obviously, you're doing stuff for the community, but also fight MND.
Yep.
What's the goals? Do you want to make 1 million beers? Do you want to go to tequilas or other things? Where do you foresee your future in all of this?
I think we're probably going into a space where we're a drinks company. Beers, we love beer and it's at the heart of what we do. But as I say, we've got these blenders where we're already sort of blending our way into some different things. But look, we've got some aims to sort of expand, particularly our hospitality footprint. We want to sort of get a few more venues and do some things that way from a hospitality point of view. We've got really good relationships, as I said, with Coles, and we want to build with some of the bigger guys to get our beers. Really, it's about Victoria at the moment. Just building a really strong base in Victoria is where we're at. Whether we can expand nationally or not, we'll sort of wait and see. But if we can expand our hospitality footprint, have a really good presence in Victoria, have a lovely business, be able to give back to the community with all the things that we do. I mean, we've already sort of exceeded what we thought we might do in terms of the fundraising perspective, but hey, let's just keep it going and see where we can get to.
Yeah, that's why I asked. It seems like it can be it sounds like it could be an exciting future depending on obviously where your sort of thoughts are with it all, if you just wanted to stick to beer or not. But even just sticking to beer can be quite exciting. Even though I don't drink it, I'm not biased to the fact that beer is quite popular.
I think what you wanted me to say was, what are you making your whiskey?
Yeah, what are you making a good whiskey for me to try? Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, and it's something that, well, you sort of joked about. It's sort of the conversation that actually made it out of the conversation with a few beers, that you actually went and made beers. And I feel like it's quite an interesting process, because I'm sure everybody's actually had that conversation. Oh, this beer's not that good. We should make our own, or we could do this better. And you've sort of gone outside that. Has there been anything that's been really interesting about the process of making beer that's maybe blown your mind that you could tell us about? What wouldn't we know about making beer?
You know what? There's so much that people don't know, and there's so much that I still don't know that our brewer blows me away. But yeah, I think the beer making process is such a fascinating thing, because here we're getting a bit too nerdy on you here, but there are so many different. You could use exactly the same ingredients. There's only water, malt, yeast and hops. They're the ingredients. But there's also the water temperature that you're mashing at. You're going to steep all the malt into basically a porridge. And what temperature do you do that? You've got all the choices to make from that perspective. You transfer the liquid across, and then you put some hops in. Again, what timing do you put the hops in? What temperature do you put the hops in at? Because all these different things create different flavours based on the timing of when you put them into the beer. So there are literally millions of different.
Wow.
Even using the exact same ingredients, you could come up with 7 or 8 or 100 different beers based on the timings of things. So I don't know. There's lots of different things. Even the water composition that you use in beer, we change the water composition. You know, we grab whatever water we are. Back in the day, you know. Getting too nerdy here.
No, get nerdy.
There's like a Czech Pilsner, which is one of the biggest beer styles in the world, and back in the day they didn't have the science to be able to change the structure of the water, so it was just whatever the water that came out of the tap. That's the water that they use. But now here in Melbourne, we can sort of neutralise the water. We know the salts and the composition of the Czech water, so we change the water so that it mirrors the water that comes out of the taps in Czechoslovakia so that we can make this style of beer. So it starts at the water, and we manipulate that to create the beer of that style. So it's a really interesting and fascinating space to be in. And now, when I first started about beer, I was like, "Ooh, look at that beer in the fancy glassware! Isn't that cool?" And
are you a bit of a snob now when it comes to beer, just in general? Like, not obviously your own, but do you go out and try new beers, or if there's a new one on the market, are you tasting them? Are you going, "Oh, I wouldn't drink that," or "Oh, that's a nice beer. We should copy that."
I would drink our own beers. Yeah. Like, our beers are the best. What would I do with that other rubbish? No. Look, it's a really collegiate community, I'm going to say, in the independent beer world. It's a tough game, like lots of competitors at the moment, but everyone's really quite collegiate and helpful and supportive of each other. So it's a good, fun industry to be in from that perspective. So yeah, I'll taste other people's beers. Yeah. I'll still go to the footy, and the only thing that's on is like a Carlton draft, so I'll have a Carlton draft. Yeah. I prefer to have someone from an independent beer background, but no, I try not to be too snobby. I'm unlike you, bad experience as a young 16-year-old, don't do whiskey. Yeah. But I've forced myself back into that game. Yeah. So I've had but I've found out there is good whiskey out there. Yeah. So yeah, I like to try lots of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not much of a drinker, but yeah, I do get snobby about something. When I find something and I like it, I just stick to it. And if I ever sway outside and if I ever sway outside of it, I'm like, oh shit, I knew I shouldn't have drunk it. I thought if I owned an alcohol company, I would probably definitely think that I would make an alcohol that I like, and I wouldn't drink anything else. And I didn't care if anyone else liked it as long as I can drink it.
I'm horribly promiscuous as a drinker. Clearly, I've just found out.
That's good though, and I feel like the beer market for individually owned companies and businesses, not these big corporations, is a really new, fun, exciting, especially one like yours that actually has this community and a charitable side to it, and it's a really good cause. And I feel like you've sort of got to be together and really look after each other, and it's a good community to be a part of, and you sort of really, ultimately you probably do want to support each other. And if you had a chance to buy an independent beer over a main beer, would you find yourself now going probably more towards the independence beer than the bigger guys?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, look, obviously I prefer the style. I know what goes into the beer. And, even from, community in terms of what we do from some of our charitable things, but I know that, between, say, 500 brewers across Australia that there are, the amount of employees that creates and people getting jobs and having a vocation through the industry is quite huge. In comparison to some of the big automated breweries that are out there, there's hardly any people. They produce 90% of the beer, but we have the majority of the workforce. Yeah. So there's a lot of there's a lot of community in what we do.
Which is really, really amazing. It's really cool I'm sure there'll be some listeners just wanting to know more about beer, and probably
I'm not going to get any nerdier than that, and I don't think I need to get my brewery. And the problem is, that's the thing, he then starts talking about this stuff and I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. So
well, it sounds like you're quite knowledgeable and you know a lot about beer, which is the main thing. And if anybody wants to support you, do you want to give a plug to sort of your socials and where they can follow you and support you?
Just go to brewmanity.com, to our website, or Brewmanity on Instagram or Facebook or whatever you're on.
Awesome.
Not doing TikToks at the moment, but
you'll get there.
We'll get there.
Everyone gets there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David. I really appreciate it. And we are going to take a break and come back because we've got a little fun segment coming up called In the Front Seat.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to shoot some rapid fire questions at you and get your answers.
Oh, I'm nervous already.
We'll be back after this.
You've just listened to In the Back Seat with Renee Gracie, a Mel and Kim Productions podcast.